Hello and welcome, my Varieties 3 students. This is an introductory session to Varieties 3, which is basically a complementary to Varieties 1 and 2. In Varieties 1 and 2, you worked on extracts of spoken English, and in Varieties 2, you analyzed the stylistic features of newspaper articles, both in popular and inequality newspapers. In this class, you will be introduced to two types of text. First, legal text. We will investigate the general stylistic features of legal text, including syntactic patterns, diction. We will trace and tackle these texts by performing a systematic stylistic description of the main market features and their functions. So we will look at the most peculiar aspects of legal text. Second, we will move to briefly examine scientific text. We will analyze them from a stylistic perspective to find out more about the nature and style of this sort of text. So let's get started. This is the outline of today's lecture. First of all, you will be introduced to stylistics. I know that you already have an idea about what stylistics is, but why not to remind you again of the basic notions and the ABCs of stylistics. Then we'll move to look at the levels of stylistic analysis. You know that stylistic analysis covers different levels like syntax, vocabulary, layout, grammar, phonology. So we will look at all these levels of analysis. For today, our actual analysis starts with the layout, namely with paragraphing, punctuation, capitalization, grammar, sentence connectivity, and we will wrap it up with a home assignment due next week. So the question here is, what is a stylistic? Since we're doing stylistic analysis to legal text, so first of all, why not to pause a minute just to think about what stylistics is. So stylistics is the study of style used in text. The term is made of two words, style, linguistics. So we have stylistics. So we study the style of text from a linguistic standpoint. So we're not here dealing with the content of the legal text to understand who's the buyer or the seller, or what are the terms and conditions that are agreed upon, and how much you're gonna pay. We are not concerned with the content of the text, rather than we are approaching the text from a very objective linguistic standpoint. We are here to describe the text. We have the data in front of us. We're going to describe it. How are the sentences arranged, the workings of language, the terms available, are there any punctuation marks, are the paragraphing organized or just laid out at random. This is how we're going to tackle the text. So a stylistic analysis involves the scrutiny and analysis of the text from a linguistic standpoint of view, by looking at linguistic choices and techniques, as well as figurative devices used in text. It endeavors, or it tries to explain how text insinuate, create, convey meaning, and how readers receive and generate meaning, and why readers react to the text the way they do. Alright, so Wikipedia defines stylistics as a branch of applied linguistics. Of course, it is the study and interpretation of text of all types, written or spoken, in regard to their linguistic style, that is to say, the author's word choice, sentence structure, figurative language, graphological devices to establish meaning in the text. Alright, so you see how objective is stylistics. So we look at the text, we study its devices, figurative devices, how language, what type of figures of speech the writer uses, how about graphological devices, capitalization, underlining, and all these tools of writing. As for the levels of stylistic analysis of text involves the examination of the following linguistic levels. Now, these are not all the levels, but just to mention some of them. For example, the layout, which is the text form or structure, the syntax, that is the grammar, syntactic forms of sentences and phrases, types of sentences, simple, compound, complex, and this is all goes under the heading of phraseology. And this is exactly what we're going to do with legal text analysis, is that we're going to look at the text and see what kind of sentences do we have, or that men of law usually use. Do they use simple or run-on long sentences? Okay, morphology, that is to say the wording and diction. Graphology, typing effects like fonts, italics, size, underline, capitalization. Phonology, does phonology play any kind of role in this sphere of legal language? Sound devices and techniques, rhyming, alliteration, consonants, and so on. I'm sure you're all familiar with these devices because you had them in your previous varieties 1 and 2 classes. Punctuation, semantics, and more and more and more. In fact, it just covers everything. Okay, it's highly inclusive kind of analysis. The English of law and legal documents aims at imposing the rights and obligations. Therefore, the language must be extra accurate and extreme clear. Okay, so we are here talking about serious things. We are talking about imposing, for example, rights and obligations, things that have to do with law. All right, so the language must be extra accurate and extreme clear. All right, the following stylistic analysis of a traditional legal passage will point out the most important stylistic features alongside with their functions with regards to layout, vocabulary, and phonology. Sadly, the course book actually, we have a legal document. I'm sorry that it's full of scribbles and it's not really clear maybe for you, but I'll urge you to try to read it, to decipher the words there, and to come up like with a general outlook about the text that you have. Okay, I know that it's not clear. I personally couldn't read it because it was full of scribbling and annotations from former, I don't know, professors or students. But anyway, I managed to read it and to come up with my own annotations and comments about it. Now I'll ask you kindly to go and do reading to the document, page 184, figure 27. While reading, note down any comments and remarks regarding the structure of the text, vocabulary, and the gist of the content, if you manage to get any kind of meaning. All right, so read it and please try to come up with any remarks or any comments about it in terms of the structure, in terms of the wording, and in terms of the gist or the cracks of the content. When we perform any stylistic analysis to any text, the first thing we look at its form. Okay, starting with paragraphing. So we look at its layout, and layout comprises paragraphing, titling, um, punctuation, and many other elements. So as for paragraphing, one of the most striking features of legal English text is the absence of paragraphing. In fact, if you go to page 184 and you read the text, you're going to find just like, some of the texts that are laid out abruptly. There are no paragraphs in the sense of having a text divided into many meaningful ideas. If you read the text in front of you, you will not come up with like a clear cut divisions of any ordinary text like an introduction or a body or amplification and a conclusion. These are just some of the divisions that are laid out at random. So and they don't have like this conventional structure of a paragraph. Okay, so there are no introductions, no amplifications, and a conclusion. The document in figure 27 is abruptly divided into three inseparable parts. There are three divisions of one and the same sentence, and therefore cannot be considered paragraphs in any way. Now, if you go, for example, to the first division and you read it, you're going to end up with one sentence, okay? It's just one sentence. This sentence is made of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines, okay? It's a redundant, it's a run-on sentence made of 9 lines, while the second division is made of 1, 2, a sentence. It's just one sentence made of 2 lines, whereas the third one is made of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 lines of one sentence. All right, so there are no spacing, as you can see from the structure or the form, that we don't have spacing, no indentation in the beginning of each paragraph or a piece of writing. So if we think of the stylistic function of such features, marked features, then there is an important function of the lack of paragraphing or spacing or indentation in legal English. First, to avoid any kind of confusion, ambiguity of documents, and prevent any shade of possibility of adding anything. So this is why that there are no kind of spacing, so that anyone cannot add any kind of comments or any kind of additions to the text that may be seen as cheating. All right, so every single space of document should not be left blank but filled with a word to prevent cheating of any kind. Okay, as for punctuation, the most prominent feature of traditional legal English is the categorical absence of punctuation marks, even the full stop. Okay, there are no use of any kind of punctuation marks. It is the only English variety that is completely punctuationless. It disregards completely the use of punctuation marks. However, recent legal documents are beginning to use the comma and the full stop. Now, modern legal documents, the very late, are beginning to use comma and full stop. Okay, and though the use of comma is very scarce and really seldom, the function is to avoid, so the function of the absence of punctuation is to avoid frauding and fraudulent additions, double interpretation, or misunderstanding of anything in the text, no matter how trivial it might be. So we will see in the upcoming slide some examples of how sometimes just a mini comma can change the whole interpretation of the document. A comma, for example, could lead to ambiguity and confusion of interpretation. As the following two examples show, the owner is not responsible for any change to the property or any loss of furniture. The second example, the owner is not responsible for any damage to the property, comma, or any loss of furniture. Now, the difference made by using a comma after property in sentence 2 is that responsibility for the damage to the property is given a priority to that for the loss of furniture. So here we have a kind of prioritized one thing over the other. Okay, so we didn't put the two things on a par or in equal footing. So, however, such relation of priority disappears from 1 because of the disappearance of the comma. Instead, the two responsibilities are put on equal terms. In fact, it must be admitted that such slight differences are never clear to ordinary readers. As ordinary readers, we may not really spot this kind of slight differences, but it's very clear to lawyers and men of law or those who work in this field. Another historical reason for the absence of punctuation marks in legal English is that it wasn't used in written English in general and was introduced later to facilitate reading aloud. And as you know, that one of the aspects of legal English is that it traditionality and formality. Okay, so whatever was used back in the past is still used and still of way in this type of style. Now let's move to capitalization. In fact, one more important feature of the layout of the legal English is a capitalization. Some words, as the example in figure 27 shows, are wholly capitalized while some others are only initially capitalized. Now look at the text, and the first word, as you notice, whereas is wholly capitalized. Now also is wholly capitalized. Witness is also are wholly capitalized. So all these words are wholly capitalized, and this is done for a function. And the function of such capitalization is to mark the beginning of a document, okay, or a new sentence or a new part. So whenever we start a new document or a new sentence or a new clause or a new part, then we started with a whole capital or with a wholly capitalized word. So moreover, whereas is initially capitalized and it is in bold type and in italics to mark the beginning of a document. Okay, so the document starts with whereas, and now begins a new part of the same document. Witness also it's a continuation or a new part of the document. As for the initially capitalized words in the document, such as society, life, schedule, table, they are given more prominence by capitalization. Now, when the writer wrote this text, he wrote it with a purpose to make society, life, schedule, or table to make them prominent, or because of their importance and significance to the content and to the context. So this is why he capitalized these words, because in his opinion these words are important to him and to the text. Okay, in fact, important words are always capitalized in legal English. They can be usually they are initially capitalized, and this is just to show that this word is important and should be taken into account and consideration when reading the whole document. Terms of insinuations like society, Parts of documents such as schedule, table of insurance, and terms of personalia referring to persons such as agent, collector are always initially capitalized for their importance to the text. One important feature of capitalization is uppercase and in the middle of the document. Such capitalization had the function of assigning more importance to the sentence or clause following it. Now, if you go back to your textbook, okay, I think it's page, yeah, figure 27, page 084, you find and it's circled. Now, the sentence that comes after this capitalized and is of great importance and significance to the document. This is why the writer wrote and for the importance for the information to come. All right. So and such a proposals has been accepted by the society on the conditions as set forth in the proposal. So this is very much peculiar and to legal writing. So to sum up, capitalization is highly significant and used in a special way to mark the beginning of a document or a new part of the same document and to emphasize important words or sentences to come. As for the level of grammar, the following grammatical features are commonly prominent in legal English. Sentence structure. Two main features of sentence structures can be spotted and really remarkable in legal English. First, the unusual length and unusual complexity. A clear example is displayed in passage 187, page 187. As shown in the example, the sentences are very long, complex, and complicated. We saw, like in the part of paragraph, in that these divisions basically, or these paragraphs, are made of sentences. If we are to look at them from a grammatical point of view, these are sentences. The first sentence is made of 7 lines, okay, and the second is made of 2 lines, and the third one is made of 12 lines. Now, can you imagine? So these are these are abnormal in English language use, but it's possible to use it in legal text. Okay, so the first remark is that the sentences are unusually long and they are unusually complex. Obviously, breaking such sentences into constituents or even recognizing its main categories is a very hard task. The function of such complexity is to reflect the oneness and compactness of the whole document and every piece of information. So sentences in legal text are completely long, are extremely complex, are very complicated to indicate the semantic unit and compactness of the whole sentence and to be precise and avoid ambiguity. And this also because of the lack of punctuation and because of also trying to deliver this whole idea in one semantic unit, that is in a one sentence. As for sentence connectivity, the main features of sentence connectivity appear to be marked in this variety. First of all, coordinate connectors such as and or are commonplace. And is used for addition, while or for alternatives. Logical connectors such as so, thus, therefore, as well as connectors of contrast, but, yet, however, are quite scarce and really seldom to be used. Pronouns as substitutes for nouns are also quite rare, if not absent. Pronouns such as they or them or he or she, they are absent in order to avoid ambiguity of reference and connection among the parts of the same sentence. Instead, nouns are repeated over and over by means of anaphoric items that we will know about them in the next slide. Anaphoric items, that is to say, referring back terms such as that, this, the, such, are rarely used to avoid ambiguity of reference. Instead, anaphoric word is used together with the word repeated. For example, the society, such proposal, this policy, or used alongside with words like the said, the mentioned, the aforementioned, the above, okay, followed by the word referred to or by the word repeated. For example, the said table, the aforementioned document, or the aforementioned proposal. Okay, so this is actually quite common and really recurrent, used for avoid ambiguity of reference and also to avoid confusion. This is why most of legal writers would always bank on heavily on these anaphoric terms.